So welcome to week 4 of Manifest. It's fantastic that you're still here. It just shows that sin isn't going to kill us, and nothing he tells us is going to wear us down. But just raise your hand if you've done a push-up this week. Very good, very good. And who has found that the whole holding themselves back during a conversation has worked for them? Just raise your hand if you've been able to do that. Raise your hand if you have struggled with holding yourself back from talking in a conversation. And who struggled with the whole food thing, the holding back on the food? What about the meditation exercise? Were we able to implement that? Yeah, raise your hand if you've been meditating this week. Fantastic. Well, this is week 4, and the most important part of week 4 is that only heroes ever show up to week 4 of anything, because it's at this point that we've lost all the people who are just riding on the train. This is for the committed, and so therefore tonight you're actually going to be treated to the best part of the whole series. Everything until now, it's just been the stuff you can find on the internet. Tonight is when you're going to get the nectar. And that's because we weren't allowed to share the secrets of what really makes life work and how to really manifest the best version of yourself until we had the people who were willing to be committed. So tonight we are going to kick off with part 4. Jokes aside, I'm truly impressed that so many people have been able to not only come each week, but actually implement what they have each part. And it's been we're really looking forward to seeing the results of the questionnaires and reading about the progress. While I won't be reading everyone's individual progress, I look forward to watching the results as they're charted so we can see how we've all done. So let's not talk about it. Let's kick right into part 4. This evening, my father once again will be hosting and sharing us. I'd like to hand over to Rabbi Leibowolf.
Thank you. Before we start using our left and right brains and using our wide-angle vision and tunnel vision and using the 2 dimensions of the brain, I'd like you to pick up your pencil or pen . You're holding it in your hand. I'd like you to give attention to its weight. Just feel the weight of the pen and the pencil. And just ask yourself, what do I think about the weight of the pen or the pencil? And just the way that it seems to be balanced in your fingers. What does it feel like asking questions about the pen or pencil that you're holding? Did you notice how you gripped it and what the grip is? Just have a look at that grip. Have you ever looked at the way that your fingers actually have gripped the pencil? And you'll find that almost everyone has a slightly different grip. I want you to take the pen or pencil and place it close to your nose and smell it. Detect any smell, aroma. Have a good look at your pen or pencil, at the colour. Just sense that colour deeply within you. Are you happy or disappointed in that colour? How do you respond to that colour in your own mind, in your own heart? Allow your sense of feel to come into play. Touching that pen or pencil, be aware of the feeling of touch. Now look a little bit deeply inside you. Are you feeling at the moment somewhat impatient or somewhat curious? Just have a sense of your mind as you are gripping your pencil and being held back from the exercise by label talking in the front. Now look at the page that you've been given this week and just ask yourself, how do you feel about that page? What do you think about the boundaries of that page? Do you feel limited by the boundaries? Comfortable about the boundaries? Do you like to operate within the lines? Would you like to break free of the lines? Anticipate transferring the colour that you have in your pen or pencil in your hand onto the paper, recognising that you are creating in the process. Just have a sense of what that means, that you are taking an item and creating something that wasn't before on that paper, and how that feels to you. Also be aware you're not going to finish the exercise now. How does that feel to you? There's a lot of self-discovery when you look at yourself in the image of your pen and pencil and the paper, and you can learn so much about yourself. Now, I will let you carry out the colouring process. And remember the rules, no talking whatsoever. Okay, tear yourself away from the exercise, and it's literally tear away. Many of you have commented to me how absolutely wonderfully relaxing it is, and so many of you have taken it up at home, which is really wonderful. But what I'm hoping perhaps a little aspect of tonight is, after that little introduction, what you're doing is achieving states of oneness with everything. So when you have a pencil in your hand, paper in front of you, you're reaching out and creating something about yourself and the pen or pencil and paper that creates achdut, oneness. And that's so with all things of existence. What you're doing here is a metaphor for relationships, and it's that much more powerful when it's even interpersonal. So just keep that in mind, that whatever you have in your hand, on your body, and out there, the attempt is to become one with it. And the 5 senses are the 5 antennae that we have been given in order to reach out. Last week we had the very good fortune of having a almost holographic projection of Dr. Debbie Herbst on screen. And believe it or not, she has actually almost literally stepped off the plane to be here. We are not quite sure what's going to come out of her mouth today, but I'm told that her subject matter will continue to be food, and I will continue to steer her in that direction should she half fall asleep in the context of the presentation. But we're very, very glad that you actually have made it, are here, and to share with us. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Label, and thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to come and spend some time together. Again, it's really been an amazing, amazing experience. And just picking up on the tail end, or picking up on Label's point of achdut, of unity. I think if anything, for me, this experience has been very much one of community, and whoever saw my little holographic presentation last week, the community is something which really stands out in terms of, I know the word holistic is, a word that we throw around. And this program, to me, if anything, really has been one of bringing all these different aspects together into unifying and bringing them together and unifying it into one goal in achieving and enhancing our health and well-being as individuals and as a community. Yes, so I have stepped off a plane yesterday. I'm good though. I'm okay. I'm awake. So hopefully I'm probably going to have to speak a little bit fast, as opposed to the way I normally speak fast, to get through what we want to talk about today. So it's called this the roadmap. Where to from here? For those who've been here, we've covered a bit of material over the last couple of weeks, and I hope you enjoyed the video presentations last week. Just to get a little snapshot of an idea. I will say that when I first came to this sort of way of thinking a number of years ago, in terms of the eat real food, keep things simple, eliminate or reduce processed food from our diets, it was all sort of a little bit revolutionary, a little bit out there. But over the last few years, we can really see the growth and people coming around. So we are perhaps pioneers in some sense, and if nothing else, please go out and help spread the word, because there is still quite a lot of work to be done. So, as we said, where have we come from? So the past, which we touched on perhaps in the first week, was that we're in a bit of a mess, and for many reasons, not just in terms of diet and nutrition and some of the other aspects that Label and the others have tried to address, help us get out of the mess. I mentioned early on that in previous generations, the determinants of health were pretty simple and straightforward. If you got a nasty infection, you'd probably, would become very ill and not survive. There were no antibiotics, hygiene wasn't what it is today. Things were sort of relatively straightforward. If an animal attacked you, you got eaten, you die. If you got sick, you died. But now, today, we talk about there's multiple determinants of health, and most of these are environmental. So there was a very interesting paper done in a medical journal last year or the year before talking about this, and they came up with the acronym of nasty malodors, that the multiple determinants of health, or in particular our poor health. Other factors, as I said, are really, really important, but the first, the N in the nasty malodors, which we'll go through in a minute, stands for nutrition. By far and away, the most important thing, which sort of seems to make sense, is what we put into our bodies. So that's just a little diagrammatic, representation. There's multiple areas, and these are all areas that have been touched on through the Manifest program. Okay, so very quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but as you see there, this is what they stand for. So nutrition, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Activity, we've got someone dealing with that. Stress, Label's just dealt with. Technopathology, we all know, or beginning to recognise the pitfalls of over-reliance and overindulgence in technology, in particular for children. I just read recent research about that, about the changes that are happening in children's brains, obviously, well, not obviously, children becoming more irritable, concentration spans are shortening. So, there's a lot of pitfalls that we have to be aware of with that. Insufficient sleep, employment, meaninglessness. I think the involvement of community, the sense of community that we feel here at Spiritgrow in general, and in particular through the Manifest program, and inspiring our lives through the various lessons here, as something which addresses meaninglessness, again, alienation, so not really belonging to anything, loneliness. We know that, there's been various research on people who are lonely, who don't have meaningful relationships, have all sorts of other impacts on their health. Over and under exposure, that's mainly to sunlight, so not having enough or having too much. Drugs, prescription, otherwise, obviously, can be very problematic. Occupation, so what that means is that various occupations are obviously, can be associated with poorer health, so the typical ones you think, miners, lung, things like that, but there are modern day equivalents of that. Certain occupations are associated with poorer outcomes. Relationships, so not having relationships or not having good relationships and being socially disadvantaged. So that's just a bit of a very quick overview, but first and foremost, number one is nutrition. So, as I've said, the power of community, and this really cannot be underestimated. I'm probably going to say it a few too many times. So, as I said, part of this program is that with the powerful connections that are being formed through programs such as this, and it cannot be underestimated, the support that we all get from one another. And that little, did I spell? Oh, no, that's spelled right. Friend, I did this quite late last night after not long off a plane. So if there's any mistakes, please forgive me. So yeah, I think that's quite a useful little statement. Friend power is our most valuable asset in achieving our goals. If anyone's ever seen this, team stands for together everyone achieves more. So we're all in it together. That's the bottom line. Take home message, we are all in this together. And there's various reasons for that. It's up to us individually, I guess, as to what we do in terms of nutrition and what we do in general. But we can all have a very powerful effect and influence on one another, on our families, our small communities, and the broader community and world around us as well. So what's our plan? How are we going to do this? So we've talked about, and what I'm going to talk about mainly today is what should we be eating? But we need to have a bit of a plan around it because the environment is stacked against us. I've just come back from America. I will tell you, it's bad here, but there, whoever's been, it's really bad. I mean, everything, they talk about things being super, everything is big. On the aeroplane, the guy sitting next to me for his snack pulled out, I'm not exaggerating, was quite, not a small fellow, thing of jelly beans, and then as the drinks trolley is coming down the aisle, I'm thinking surely he's, anyway, he ordered the Coke, and you see people doing it's bad. The environment is stacked against us. I mean, they did have water. He could have had the water, so it's not as if he didn't have choice. But most of the drinks on the drinks trolley were, either sugar or artificially sweetened. Plus the snacks that are. Must say, I was not unimpressed with the things offered in the airport. There were, you could buy nuts, you could buy bags of nuts, you could buy, some relatively healthy options, but by far and away 90 or 95% of, and there was just this overabundance of food outlet after food outlet, and we have it here too, we're not immune. So the environment is stacked against us. We all need to be in this, we need to support ourselves and support one another. So part of that is having the right frame of mind, and that's why we're participating in this program to develop some mindfulness techniques, learn some stress reduction techniques, because we know that when we're stressed, when we're not focused on what we're doing, it can become really difficult. So environment I've just spoken about, and that's, as I said, pretty much stacked against us, but we're beginning to change that, and it's up to all of us to help bring about some of the changes. But we also need to think ahead, and when I say think ahead, for example, going on a long trip, if you're going to rely on what's readily available, you might end up making some less than wise choices. So aeroplane food in particular is not very good, so thinking ahead. These are just obviously the examples that come to mind now. But thinking ahead, if you're going to a function, the types of foods that are going to be available there, having something to eat. I mean, these are just simple techniques but it's really about planning. And again, at the bottom, support, which is why we're all here. So what should we eat? That's going to be the main topic of tonight. And I don't know if any of you remember this. I think it was a couple of years ago. I think this is out of one of the newspapers that every week has, you know, some celebrity. You know, what do you eat? Tell me about my day on a plate. So does anyone remember this? Yeah, Pete Evans. So, and he was really ridiculed and ripped apart for this. It is, I mean, if you read it, the list of foods, I mean, most people have no idea what that's talking about. And here we are, about my initial message was keep it simple. You know, what's alkalized water? I don't know what that means. You know, he's talking about things that most people, you know, don't know, or he actually makes it sound more complicated than it needs to be, and makes it sound if you don't eat all these weird and wonderful things like sprout. What does he talk about? You know, the activated almonds that no one had any idea what that means. Emu meatballs. I mean, really. So he sort of actually, you're right, did probably a bit of damage. And gave a little bit of a negative publicity, really. Although, you know, as they say, any publicity is good publicity, because really what he was trying to do was talking about clean eating, eating real foods, eating whole foods, not any processed foods. But, yeah, probably went a bit over the top. But, so in reality, so we talked originally about things that we should avoid. You know, highly processed foods, too much sugar, too much wheat, the wrong oils. We have talked about them in the past, and the videos that you watched last week would have brought some of those lessons home as well. So in general terms, anything that triggers inflammation, because we know that inflammation is the centre and the trigger, the precursor to the chronic diseases that we talk about. Anything that causes an insulin spike, which in turn causes inflammation. So things that cause insulin are sugars, basically, and unreal foods. We spoke about that, you know, things that have too many ingredients you can't pronounce, long list of ingredients, things that can sit on a shelf and last for a long time. So we know they're the things that we need to avoid. The concept that I'd like to introduce, and well, is a concept that we started out, that we really should be looking at food as our medicine. In other words, because I suppose we could get sort of somewhat dismayed and disheartened at this point and say, well, there's all this damage has already been done and the environment's stacked against us and all this processed food out there. You know, is it possible to reverse the damage that's been done? And I think if we look at food as being the most powerful tool that we have available to us, it's a necessity of life, looking at food as being the answer. Food has been a big part of the problem, but you know, likewise, it should be the answer. And these are a couple of the reason I put them these two. Well, I put the quote, you know, the Hippocrates quote. There's various versions of this, and some discussion is that's what he really said, but the idea is there. The other one talking about, you know, I think that's fair to say that the health industry pays no attention to food. You know, not completely none, but not enough. Certainly not enough. In fact, today I was speaking to, we have trainee doctors in our practice, and so we've got very young, or very keen, very, very bright young doctor working with us at the moment, and we were speaking about polycystic ovary syndrome, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. And insulin, by the way, is a big part of that. Insulin resistance is a big part of. And we were talking about, you know, what can you do about it and the drugs that are used. And I kept saying, well, but what about the lifestyle stuff that we need to talk about first? Yes, we can just throw drugs at people, but shouldn't we be talking about... And I was, I suppose, disappointed that really her focus... I said, that's her training. I can't be upset or blame her. That's how the whole training system goes, is it's all about, you know, what drugs you can use. The other thing, and then we went on to speak about some other food-related matters, and again, you know, she's still holding on to a lot of the myths that we've tried to dispel. So really, this going on further, Thomas Edison. So Hippocrates has been, you know, the previous statement, but Thomas Edison also very famously talked about, you know, doctors of the future, which I think, when did Thomas Edison live? Anyway, whenever it was, a while ago, quite a long time ago, spoke about the doctors of the future will use food, or, you know, that nutrition will be the cure and the preventer of disease. So obviously very ahead of his time, and obviously people didn't listen to him for a long time, but we're now starting to realise. So what should we eat? So I'm going to go through quite quickly, because people, this is what I guess everyone asks me, okay, we understand what we shouldn't eat, and we understand what the problems are, but what should we eat? So I'm going to go through the various food groups. So vegetables, so by far and away, vegetables should probably make up the main part, or a large part of our diet, and the reasons are they contain a lot of phytonutrients, so a lot of nutrients which can reverse or be the antidote to the inflammatory damage in our body. Also, we haven't, one thing, there's a few, more than a few, a number of things we haven't spoken. One is this concept of the microbiome. Everyone has a unique, what we call gut flora, the bacteria that are in, so we always hear, you know, when you get given antibiotics, people might have spoken to you about, well, you know, the antibiotics kill the bad bacteria, but they kill the good bacteria as well. This concept of everybody has their own individual microbiome, so the makeup of bacteria is increasingly being recognised as another determinant of health, and that because of a lot of the damage from the stuff that we've been putting into our systems, it's got quite altered. Interesting. I went to a talk a couple of years ago where they talked about your microbiome being set when you're in your mother, before you're born, and it goes back generations to what your grandmother ate when she was pregnant with your mother. Anyway, we can do something about it, and so vegetables play a very big part in this. So we talk, you know, you'll get told, you know, you have to eat a high fibre diet. Fibre is really important. Fibre is important because it nourishes the bacteria. In these top 5 vegetables, that's from American data, number 1 is potato. One would argue it's not really a vegetable. Tomato. And when I said, you know, does that mean tomato sauce? A number of years ago, the American government, you know, who give money for food in schools, tomato sauce was listed as a vegetable, not tomatoes. Anyway, the third top of the vegetables is corn, which is, you know, not necessarily so bad. Onions and iceberg lettuce has got probably the least nutrition of any vegetable. So what should we be eating? All the non-starchy grains. The more colourful, the better. Interesting, I found that little piece of information. We've only recently in Australia, that I'm aware of, we started to get different colour carrots, for example. The deeper the colour in general, the more nutrients in a vegetable. But we should really be looking at having a rainbow on our plate. So because the different nutrients are found in different colours. So I've just listed some vegetables, but you know, there's many, and there are many to explore. Okay, if they're fermented, they're even better. Meat and other proteins. For a long time, meat in particular has been demonised. We now know that the idea that saturated fat is what causes heart disease is not true. We don't need to be so cautious about limiting it. It's got lots of other nutrients in it apart from protein. I've put up there, and the only reason I put that up there, I know a lot of people will say, well, you can get protein from vegetable sources and tofu and things like that. You need to eat an awful lot of them to get the equivalent that you would get from animal sources of protein. Eggs are really good. Just yesterday, I think there was new research released in Australia where they compared people who ate lots of eggs compared to people who didn't. The health outcome, there's no link with cardiovascular disease, no problem. The idea that the cholesterol of an egg causes you to have high cholesterol has all been debunked. And yeah, that little thing that, 11-year-old, see, that's my mistake. The lady, she lived for 117 years, not 11 years, was famously, I've forgotten her name, an Italian name. Anyway, when she was in her 90s, someone asked her what's her secret, and she said she'd been eating 2 or 3 eggs a day for all her life. There's no great advantage of chicken and poultry over meat. For a long time when we were talking about low fat, that's what everyone said, but anyway, I hope that's the message. Fish. Every healthy eating plan in the world, other than the vegan diet, will tell you that fish is really important. Lots of research, people who ate fish 2 or 3 times a week have better outcomes, lower risks of diabetes and all those things. They're good in omega-3s. Which fish? The smash, so those fish there. So, you know, traditional Jewish diet can do not bad if people eat their herring. The bigger the fish in general, there are other issues of mercury and stuff like that. Canned fish is okay, wild is better, but we don't always have access to it. Dairy, this is another big one of the myths. I'm not going to go into it too much, but who is the one telling us all the time that we need to have 3 cups of milk a day? Where's the evidence for it? Interestingly, countries where they've got lower intake of dairy have lower incidence, OP stands for osteoporosis, And there's a thing called the calcium paradox, that countries that have higher intake actually have more fractures. So I know I'm turning things on people's heads a little bit. The one thing that does increase your bone mineral density, BMD, is exercise, not milk. A lot of people have an issue with dairy, lactose intolerance. We're all inherently lactose intolerant. We are the only mammal that continues to have milk after infancy. And we're also the only mammal that has milk from other mammals. So one has to question why. Apart from the, we might like how it tastes, but where is all this coming from? And we won't go into the government and industry involvement in all of this. So some people that find dairy very inflammatory. CMPA stands for cow's milk protein allergy. It is increasing in incidence. So one would ask, why are more children than ever becoming... Actually, people get very confused, lactose. And anyway, the protein in the milk, why are people allergic to that? If you're going to have dairy, the ones to stick with would be yogurt. So the cultured ones, obviously yogurt, not fruit, not sugar-laden yogurt, but Greek natural yogurt, full cream yogurt, kefir, butter, and certain cheeses. Grains, we don't need them. That's the bottom line. We really don't. The 4 is against why we've always been told we need to have grains, because they've got certain nutrients and fibre. We've just spoken about that you can get all the fibre that you need from vegetables, and certainly all the nutrients. Against, as I said, you can get them all from vegetables. Basically, when I said before, anything that causes an insulin spike is something we should avoid. All grains break down into starch, which is basically sugar. Is there any difference between eating cornflakes and eating a bowl of sugar? Not really, in terms of in your body, not really. So if you're going to eat grains, go for, and like vegetables, there's lots of sort of things that we are only recently becoming aware of that are grown in South America, then in Africa. Teff is a grain that's eaten in Africa. Quinoa is something fairly recent on the scene for us. So these tend to be, first of all, they're higher in protein, they don't cause inflammatory damage, they don't have gluten in them. Gluten is a whole other thing that we haven't got time to go into. And in general, try not to eat, if you're going to eat, some of these of the healthier grains, try not to eat them with every meal. Fruits, also really, really important, but everyone's got a different threshold depending on how insulin resistant you are, which is largely determined by your genes, but also from activity level. Juice is not a fruit. Pomegranate is probably, if you want to talk about the antioxidants in fruit, pomegranate is great. And these are the other ones, everyone thinks watermelon's really high in sugar, which it is, but it's also mainly water. So in general, it's not so bad. Try and limit things like bananas, grapes, and mangoes. And really important, avocados, coconut, and olives are all fruit. So that's just a little in graphic form of the things that we should be eating. Oils we've spoken about before. Anything that God made, it's good. And I like that little thing. Breast milk happens to be 24% saturated fat. If it was, is that how we should be starting off our lives? Obviously it is. It's got all sorts of health benefits. Things that made in the factories are the ones that we should avoid. I haven't got time to go into it. Other factors, people always talk about organic. It's important to wash and scrub to reduce pesticides, because there are also all sorts of problems. Try and eat locally sourced, seasonal. We haven't got time to go into supplements and cooking methods. And the last word, and I think that's really important. We need to value our bodies and our lives and our health, and learn how to treat it well. And that's why we're all here tonight. I will try and put some sources together, because I've got some really good sources, and also a bit more comprehensive of the list of foods to eat, and get it all out to everyone. Thank you. Sorry.
I'd love to hear Debbie when she's really in a hurry. Thank you so much. It's been so special of you to share with us. I think that we've only had headlines for food for thought, and I'm quite certain that this needs development and expansion, and I'm sure we'll be providing you with an opportunity for that. Just stay tuned. Joel Gershman has now become a family friend to all of us, telling us exactly how to manage ourselves, but in a very, very holistic manner. Today he's going to look at the most variable element in management, and that is you. Joel.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the management component of the Manifest series. By now, I'm hoping that you will have developed your core purpose, which is the meaningful impact you'd like to have in your life. I'm hoping that you've also explored how to apply that purpose practically across the various domains of your life. And I hope you've also looked at how to retain and regain balance in the face of challenges and setbacks that threaten to knock you off course from your purpose. That's what we discussed last week. And in particular, we looked at how to identify and test the story you're telling, the interpretation of events, and how to reframe setbacks in terms of opportunities for growth and learning. And I hope you had a chance to continue to consider and reflect on and reframe a particular challenge that you're facing at the moment in your life. And I hope you've been able to access the workbook. I know a couple of people asked me about that. I'm hoping you've been able to access it this time round. Tonight, I'd like to look at a final idea, which is reflecting to learn. Right? Last week, we discussed how adopting a growth mindset is important and that learning from challenges is critical. But how do you actually learn from the past? And what if you're not entirely sure what you should be learning from it and what you should be doing differently in the future? Right? I think we would all agree that learning is critical to growth and success. And if so, we need to do it effectively. And to do that, we need to be able to engage in a process of honest self-reflection. Right? Let me just debunk a myth for a moment. You may have heard of an American philosopher, psychologist, and educational reformer called John Dewey. And he put it succinctly. He said, "We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience." There's been some interesting research in this field. In 2014, there was a study that was conducted called Making Experience Count. And what they found, what researchers found, was that people had a 23% better performance in groups that reflected after a learning experience than those who had not. Right? Who here has heard the phrase, practice makes perfect? Yeah? Please don't believe it, it's rubbish. Right? Seriously. Practice doesn't make perfect. If you practice the wrong thing over and over and over again, you don't get better. You just get better at doing the wrong thing.
If you avoid mistakes and you practice, you do get better.
Ah, but that's a different kind of practice. Of course, practice is important, and I agree with that. But you have to be practicing the right things. And that's the key. I don't know if anyone here has ever read a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Has anyone ever read that? It's a fantastic read. It's actually one of my favourite books. But I have to say that the author, Malcolm Gladwell, actually gets part of it wrong. He talks about something called the 10,000 hours rule. Right? He says the 10,000 hours rule, I'll take it from his quote, says that if you look at any kind of cognitively complex field, from playing chess to being a neurosurgeon, we see this incredibly consistent pattern that you cannot be good at that unless you practice for 10,000 hours, which is roughly 10 years, if you think about 4 hours a day, right? And he goes through lots of people in his book, from sports stars to chess champions to people in business. 10,000 hours of practice is what you need. One example that he talks about, not in his book but in another area, is Andre Agassi. Anyone remember Andre Agassi, the tennis player? Yeah, #1 in the world for many years. Widely known as the best return of serve ever in history. Why? Well, if you ever read his autobiography, did you know that his father made him return 1,000 tennis balls every single day? He had a ball machine on his tennis court, and he was not allowed in for dinner until he had returned 1,000 balls from the age of 9 to the age of 19, right? Some people might call that a form of abuse, I don't know. But by the age of 19, he actually got so fed up with it, he quit tennis. He was burnt out. Eventually, less than a year later, someone convinced him to get back into it, and the rest was history. He became the best return of serve ever. Now, if you return 1,000 balls a day, you're going to get pretty good at it. But where Malcolm Gladwell went slightly wrong was he misquoted the study. There was a study that he based this idea on. And the study said it's not enough to get practice. You need what they call deliberate practice or reflective practice, where you practice something, but then afterwards you reflect on the result and you see where you can improve for the future. And then you practice based on that reflection. That is what produces results, not mere practice. And so the question becomes, how do you engage in the kind of meaningful reflection that can genuinely enhance your learning and your performance in life? And there are 3 key steps that I want to explore with you. Here we go. Introspection, articulation, and commitment. Now, introspection is about identifying and becoming aware of why the unsuccessful situation in your life occurred. And in particular, and this is the hard bit for most of us, what your own contribution to that situation was. Right? It's all too easy to attribute what happens to us to outside external causes. And in some cases, that's true, of course. But in many cases, even where there are external factors at play, we have actually contributed to it in some way. And the intention here is not to be self-critical or beat ourselves up. That's not what we're saying here. It's about becoming more aware, more mindful of our contribution. And in actual fact, it's empowering for us. Because if we recognise our contribution, that we're not just passive players in what happens to us, we realise that we can actually change the situation for next time, at least to some extent. And that belief that we can change things is the basis for all improvement, learning and growth. To apply this idea, there are a number of steps. And this is actually your first piece of homework for today. So listen carefully. Here are the steps. What I'd like you to do is to find a quiet environment that's conducive to introspective thinking. That means close off your laptop, turn off your phone, eliminate all distractions, get into an environment where you can actually think clearly. Then, I'd like you all to select a past unsuccessful experience in your life. I don't care what it is. It could be a failure in business. It could be a failure in a personal relationship. It could be some area where you felt like you didn't achieve what you felt you could achieve, what you wanted to achieve. And I'd like you to call that experience to mind. Recall your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviour. And once you've done that, identify the outcome you wanted to achieve in that particular scenario. And now here's where it gets interesting. Then I'd like you to diagnose why you were unable to achieve that outcome by coming up with, this is critical, at least 10 answers to the question, I didn't achieve this outcome because. Now, 10 answers might seem like overkill, but I have to say it's deliberate because it forces you to look past the external factors and look for deeper explanations that may relate to your own contribution to the situation, which is often where the real learning is. And once you've done that, the idea is finally to select the top 3 explanations, the ones that resonate most for you, and for each of them ask yourself, what can I learn about myself from this explanation? And I'd like you to consider any unhelpful thought patterns, stories that you seem to be telling yourself, personality traits or habits that you've adopted. And be on the lookout for themes that might be playing out in other situations in your life too. I can recall, remember we've been using Howard as our case study here. I can recall when Howard went through this process. His business had hit rock bottom and he was deciding whether to jump back in and give it one last shot or close up shop and end it. And he decided to take a long drive down the Great Ocean Road by himself to think about why things went wrong, what his contribution might have been, and what he could learn from it all. And his first set of diagnoses around why things went wrong were all focused externally, right? Not on him. Right? First, his diagnosis number 1 was the market was tough, right? He'd barely emerged from the global financial crisis. It wasn't his fault. Law firms were cutting costs left, right and centre. Not his problem that the business was failing, right? His next explanation was that his sales manager should have been more proactive in seeking new clients rather than staying in his comfort zone and servicing existing ones, right? His third explanation was that getting prompt payment from clients is like pulling teeth. And all of these things had elements of truth to them. They weren't lies. But he had to come up with 10 explanations. So once he exhausted all of these external ones, he had to start looking deeper. And eventually he ran out of excuses and he began to explore his own contribution. And that's when it hit him. He had one of those, epiphany moments, as he calls it. And he realised that what he'd done is he'd abdicated responsibility in his business. He was the owner of his business, but he hadn't taken ownership for his business. He knew that micromanagement wasn't the answer, but he also realised that just relying on others and then blaming them without giving them clear direction, vision and systems to empower them to do their jobs was actually his issue. And it was at that point that he then came back into the business and started taking ownership and giving some proper direction, and things completely and dramatically changed for him in the business and in his life as a result. And so that is the introspection step. Is that making sense? Yeah? Okay. The next ones are easy, right, compared to this one. This is the hard one. The next step is articulation. Once you've become aware of your contribution, this step is about literally articulating that contribution, either in writing or orally to yourself. Right? It might feel strange or uncomfortable, but there's something very powerful about verbalizing our contribution to a situation. You don't need to communicate this to anyone else necessarily. Sometimes it is helpful, though, to talk to someone if you've got a confidant that you can discuss this with, but you don't have to. Simply verbalizing it, talking about it, writing it down, helps to separate yourself from what happened, and it really enables you to achieve a greater level of objectivity around the situation. Some people find it helpful to write this down in a journal, for example. What I'd like you to do as your homework is to use the workbook that I've given you and have a go at just jotting down for yourself what you feel the contribution was. Once you've done that, we can move to the final step, which in some ways is the most critical. It's the end game. It's where you make a commitment to move forward. So once you've identified what's been holding you back, your contribution, make a deliberate, explicit commitment to the change you want to make, in whatever element of your life that is. Research studies confirm that actually making a commitment to yourself leads to more effective long-term behaviour change. And that's really step 3 in the process. And so using your workbook, I'd like you to call to mind a past unsuccessful experience, follow the 3 steps that we talked about, and I'd be really surprised if you don't derive some genuine insight into how to improve, which is the basis of all learning, growth and success ultimately. And so what this does is it wraps up the formal ideas I wanted to share with you in this whole series. But I'd like to leave you with one final challenge. And it's perhaps the most important of all the ideas that I talk about. And it's to integrate these practices into your daily lives. It's one thing to learn about this stuff in a workshop or seminar type context like this. It's one thing to try them out once or twice on some real life scenarios. That's wonderful, and I advocate it. But it's another thing entirely to make them a habit, literally a part of your life, such that they affect you and help you in a lasting, ongoing way. And the question is, how do you integrate these ideas and skills into your life? Let me throw it open to you for a second. How do you integrate this stuff? We've talked about 4 different concepts over the 4 weeks. How do you make that part of your life, as opposed to a workshop you went to once or twice?
Develop new habits by doing it on a regular basis. Every single day.
Nice. Habits. Doing it on a regular basis, yeah. So create some accountability for yourself. In fact, those are the 2 most powerful strategies. You're exactly right. So one is make it a habit. What I often say is, literally make it a regular practice for yourself. Lock in regular times in your weekly schedule to apply the 4 practices that we've been talking about. Even if you want to start small, I normally advocate starting small rather than trying to do too much at once. Start with 10 minutes once a week. Seriously. that itself will have a powerful impact. Now, the question is, what do you do in that time? So, oh, sorry, I'm not going to go there. There are really 4 things that you're going to do, right? And this recap the 4 things that we've talked about over the 4 weeks. So number 1, you start by reminding yourself of your core purpose, right? What are those core values that motivate you? And check if you're still acting in alignment with them, right? It's actually quite inspiring and fulfilling to know that you're working towards and living by values that are important and meaningful. That's the step 1. Next, you review the goals and actions you set for each domain of your life. Remember those? You created those 90-day action plans? Review them. See how you're going. Are you actually keeping on track with the action plans that you set for yourself? This keeps you focused on what you need to do each day to apply your purpose. Then, step 3, if any challenges have arisen that threaten to knock you off balance, work through the reframing process we discussed last week. Ask yourself, what story am I telling about the event? What evidence might support a different, less negative interpretation or story? What can I learn from the experience? Right? And then finally, step 4 is what we discussed tonight. Where it's not obvious what you should be learning from your experiences, engage in that 3-step process of honest reflection to help you improve and move closer to your goals. Engage in that introspection stage, the articulation stage, and the commitment stage. And if you do those things on a regular basis, you're going to start to integrate this into your life. I'm not sure what was your name at the back? You mentioned the idea of what gets done gets measured or something, yeah? People do what they know is being watched. So integrating this as a habit into your life is important. But if you're not the kind of person who is entirely self-motivated, then I suggest you build in some accountability. In other words, find someone you care about to check in on you. Whether it could be a spouse, partner, could be a friend, a loved one, it could be a mentor, it could be someone that you pay, it could be, there are lots of different choices here. Just to give you one example in my own life, I'm going to finish in just a second. When I was much younger, I used to do exercise on a regular basis. I used to do gym 3 or 4 times a week. It wasn't a problem. Then I got married, had kids. For 10 years, I didn't do any exercise whatsoever, and I wanted to get back into it. Right? So you know what happens. You buy a gym membership, right? And you go the first couple of weeks, and then you don't go anymore, right? Things get busy, and that's life. Life hits you. And even though you've decided, no, I'm going to go on Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays or whatever days you agree, somehow it just doesn't happen. So eventually, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to pay a personal trainer, right? Not because I actually need the personal trainer to tell me what to do, because I actually know what to do. I need the personal trainer to hold me accountable for coming, because they're waiting for me. And as soon as I did that, I started going. I knew there was someone waiting for me at 5:45 in the morning. I had to get up and be there. And everything changed as a consequence of that. I started creating some accountability for myself. And so my last piece of advice is, in addition to building this into your regular schedule, create some accountability for yourself, however you do that. And that's it for this week, and that's the culmination of the management segment. Hopefully you're already starting to feel a bit more balanced, more fulfilled, more focused. And if you integrate these ideas into your life, I really hope you'll continue to build a successful, meaningful and fulfilling life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joel. Thank you for taking your time from family time to share with us. Thank you for bringing a member of the family with you who's going to succeed you. Your succession plan is already being put into practice. That's really great. We'll regroup in about 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. We have a very, very important little segment to take place right now. We're going to show our appreciation to all the presenters of the Manifest series. And Menachem and I are acting on your behalf. We're going to present each of the presenters with a certificate, but this is a certificate that will be going to all of you. You'll be receiving it, but we'd like the presenters to receive it, and the presenters are going to receive a gift. So I'm going to ask Menachem to present the certificate and the gift as I call out the name. In alphabetical order, Mr. Sim Flint. Where's the... Pleasure, pleasure. Okay, Mr. Joel Gershman. Dr. Debbie Herbst. Dr. Beverly Lewis. Ms. Lauren Schneeweiss. Rabbi Menachem Wolf. And this one is?
We gave Sim already. Labour Wolf.
And I'm now going to turn the mic over to Menachem, who's going to continue his presentations on the various themes in Kabbalah that he's chosen to do so. And tonight is a very special one because it runs totally in alignment with the nature of creation, chesed. But I'm going to let him explain that.
Thank you. Thank you. So in week one, I spoke about Modeh Ani, which was about creating a mindset for how we would look at the day and the realization that we are not here by chance, but that each one of us has purpose and meaning, and each one of us can live a meaningful life. In week two, we introduced the Shema, which was the realization that everything is actually one. So I have meaning, and I have meaning within a context, and if I play my part, then that context is complete. Last week, I spoke about Iskafia, and Iskafia was about creating an inner vacuum which could then be filled with purpose and meaning. And the way that we created that inner vacuum was by literally suspending ourselves from partaking in something that we wanted to do just because we wanted to. And it was less about the act of abstinence and more about the act of self-control. And we used two examples, one which was abstaining in conversation at one point from sharing something when you really wanted to share, and the other was to hold back from eating an element of your dessert or an element of your main course, but you had to remove it before you started eating, so that there was that feeling of struggle before the removal. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to tzedakah. And the reason why I've saved this for last is because once we have a context in which we live and we realize what everything is and we create an absence and a vacuum within us, we can then allow blessing to flow into that vacuum. Tzedakah is commonly translated as charity. And in a way, it's not a very mystical, it's almost a do-good type thing. We give charity to the poor. And more often than not, when you think about charity, you'll think about poverty, you'll think about those who don't have, and you'll think about the fact that you have something, and you give it to them. What we hardly ever think about is that charity impacts us in a more profound way than it impacts the people that we give charity to. And tonight I'm not going to talk about the impact of charity on society. I'm not going to talk about societies that give charity or how good it is to give. I'm going to talk about the selfish side of charity and what it does for us. Tzedakah. It has the same Hebrew letters as the Hebrew word tzedek. Tzedek means righteous. Now, righteousness is a good thing, but righteousness can also go off the deep end. Righteousness for what it is, justice, to do what is correct, is not necessarily always right. It needs context. And it's possible for human ego to sway what is right or what is just. It is possible that justice will be used in order to seek retribution. And I'll give you a very good example of justice. You read in the paper about a person who about 16 youths that crash a party and trash a house. They're all immigrants. None of them are Australian citizens. And the police stand outside and there's nothing they can do. And their cars get trashed, their windscreens get smashed, and these youths have no respect for the law. And what does everyone in this room think? Justice. Deport them. Throw them in jail. That's not justice. That's retribution. You had an emotional response. You're looking for, well, you're not calling for a death penalty because I don't want to be seen as being an irrational, bloodthirsty person, but deport them or chuck them in prison. And then there'll be a minority of the people in this room that will say, oh, give them love. They need hugs. They've grown up in a war zone. And everyone's wrong. You know why? Because you got it from a newspaper. You have no idea what happened. You weren't there. You haven't heard all the facts, but you've already come to an assumption about what should. And we call that justice. And that is human justice, and human justice can be wrong. Tzedakah, which has the same lettering as tzedek, has one extra letter, and that is tzedakah. Tzedek, hey. Hey is the Hebrew letter that refers to the infinite. It refers to what we might call God. Tzedek, hey, is the just of the infinite. It's never wrong. It is always right. It is always perfect. It is always measured to the right amount. You can never pervert charity. No matter how narcissistic you want to be in your giving of charity, you'll never be able to cause damage through charity. You can't. And even if you say, oh, you'll spoil them by giving them too much money, nonsense. You cannot pervert charity. Charity in of itself is a good thing and will always be a good thing. So the question is, what do I do with this interesting idea of tzedek hey, of tzedakah? So I'd like to draw on some of the teachings that stem from the Arizal, as I have for the series up until now. First, an idea that predates the Arizal goes all the way back to the Mishnaic period, and that is our view on money. Money is not ours. The Jewish view of money is that we are entrusted to hold money. We're almost like divine bankers, if you will. It's given to us, and it's for us to choose and decide what we're going to do with it. And while we often think money is ours, and so much so that we actually feel we can control our money if we hold on to it, it's actually not correct to view money like that. Money comes our way for us to spend and use it the appropriate way. Someone that has more money has greater blessing in their life. Someone who has less money has less blessing. I'm talking about the blessing of money, not blessing in general. Has less of that particular blessing in their life. Blessing is not something we create. Blessing is something that we receive. And that is why two people can go to work and one will earn one amount and one will earn another amount. And you'll say, oh, it's because one is more intelligent, one isn't. I'm not talking about that. Talking about take two smart people, both of them put in 80 hours a week, and one will find success in life and one won't. And there is no amount of study that will be able to ultimately explain why some do succeed and why some do have incredible opportunities and other people seem to never have good opportunities. And that's because we don't create opportunities, we seize them. These are blessings that come our way should we merit them. So the view of money
is that it's not ours. It's been entrusted to us. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? The act of giving charity, the act of taking money, which is a part of who you are, because when you go to work, as the Alter Rebbe Zalman of Liadi writes, when you go to work, you earn money. When you go to work, your whole body goes to work. Your brain, your body, your heart, your emotions. And therefore, whatever you are paid is not just money, but it's actually a reward for your full body investment. And therefore, money is actually a part of your body. When you give money away to charity, you are giving a part of your body, a part of your soul away, which is why some people struggle to do so. At some point, we have an amount where I can't do that. And the truth is, yes, you can. I can show you how. Yes, you can, but we don't. We all have a point at which we say, oh, I can't afford that. I can't give that much to charity. But it's a bit like turning on a tap. The more you turn it on, the more the water flows. The water is not really ours. Water flows everywhere. What we have is control of turning the tap. We can turn the tap off. We can turn the tap on. If we turn it off, we retain the water. If we turn it on, the water flows. And so what we really have control over is the flow, but not over water itself. Now, if we can, turning on a tap is hard work. It's a lot harder than just leaving it off. If we do turn it on and we do allow the water to flow, then we can benefit from it. So if we can give charity, we can benefit from it. If we hold on to our money, we will not benefit. Now the question is, what sort of benefit am I talking about tonight? So let me tell you about the Kabbalistic writings as to where charity as an energy stems from and what is the energy that it causes to flow. So buckle up, we're going for a ride. Light. The reason why we know there is light is not because there is light, but we see the reflection of light. We see the absorption and the reflection. Look around this room and you see colors, and therefore you know there is light. But the truth is, we're not truly experiencing light. We are experiencing processed light. We're experiencing light that has been refracted, light that has been stripped away. So you see yellow, or you see turquoise, or you see brown. You're not seeing white light. You're not seeing pure light. We only benefit from light as a result of it actually hitting a surface and being somewhat reflected. Which is why if you go to space, where there's heaps of light, there is no light. Because there is no surface for the light to reveal itself. We need the surface in order to see the light. The surface is an interesting thing in itself, because although it is nothing, it allows us to view light. And that's why we might say, what a beautiful wall. But is the wall really beautiful, or is the purity of the light before it hits the wall? Tzedakah comes from a level which is called Malchut de Atzilut. Atzilut is the emanation. Imagine light emanating but not hitting a surface. Malchut is the point of where light is just about to hit a hard surface. Imagine you could look at that light, not the light in its original source, but the light just before it's refracted, just before it is absorbed. What if you could have access to the light just a moment before? The pure light. What if you could look at the wall and see the pure light and not just the yellow light? What if you could see the rainbow every single time? It would be incredible. Life would be an incredible experience if we could see all that all the time. And of course, I'm talking metaphorically. Malchut Da'atzilus is the point at which spiritual energy begins to become physical. Malchut Da'atzilus is the point of emanation just prior to it becoming a form, just prior to becoming an angel, just prior to becoming a soul, as we relate to it. I'm not talking about physical like this. This is far down the food chain. I'm talking about concepts developing. What is it? What is a concept? What is a concept? There is infinite knowledge, there is infinite information, and then you have a concept, which is this, I don't know, coagulation of information coming together in a single component. Malchut Datzilut would be that point at where the information is just about to form. What if you had access to that? The giving of tzedakah draws that energy, the energy prior to physical existence, prior not as in time, as in a spiritual concept, prior to. Light before it hits your eye still exists, but it just hasn't hit your eyes, so you haven't experienced it. So that energy, prior to its manifestation, prior to it actually existing in a tangible way, what if you could have access to it? And you'd be like, what would I do with that? This is so abstract, it almost makes no sense. So the best analogy I can give is, what if you had a boat with a sail, but you never put the sail up? Where would your boat go? You get all the wind, but the sail never goes up. If you don't understand wind, but you understand how to hoist a sail, you're going to go somewhere. But if you understand wind, but you don't understand how sails work, you're not going to go anywhere. And so ultimately the Kabbalist mystic goes nowhere. But the person that raises the sail but doesn't fully understand aerodynamic or anything is still able to sail. We're not using tonight to explore what is this Malchut Datzilut. I'm here to tell you that it exists. The question is, are we willing to raise our sail to catch it so that there is momentum, so that there is flow, so that there is movement through the sea of life? When we give charity, when we give of ourselves, we are drawing that particular energy into our life. That is an energy that is uncontained and unrestricted. And therefore, when we bring that into our life, when it anchors itself within me, it becomes part of my consciousness. But because it can't be anchored just to me, it exists around me. And it becomes a part of my surroundings. Hence, it starts creating opportunity, our environment, as well as the way I view the world, the way I experience the world within me. So it both shifts my thinking as well as the opportunities around me. Which is why it says that a person who gives charity is actually rewarded with kiflayim, with double the amount that they gave. Because they are creating both an energy within and an energy without. And as a result, we can benefit from that. That is the impact of giving tzedakah. What I'm here to do, and what your homework is, well, I'm here to tell you, is your homework. Your homework is to give a little bit of tzedakah every day. And when I mean a little bit, I mean taking $1, $2, breaking it into 20-cent pieces, and throughout the day, giving 20 cents to charity. 20 cents. And you'll be like, 20 cents? That's not going to help anyone. I should give the $2 to someone. Good. Give the $2 to someone and then get 20-cent coins and give those. Because this isn't about impacting the world. This is about channeling energy. If you give $100 in one lump sum, you will draw this energy into your life. One time. The amount that you give doesn't change this energy because this energy isn't bound by physical substance. It's like turning on a tap. It's either on or it's off. It doesn't make a difference. Well, it does, but pretend it doesn't make a difference how much you turn it on. Once you turn a tap to an open faucet, that's it. It just keeps flowing. You can keep turning. It does nothing. When we give, if we give 20 cents or we give $500, it makes a difference in the impact of the other person that we're giving to, or the institution that we're giving to, or the organization that we're giving to. But in context of us, it makes no difference. When you have a little bit of spirituality, you've got all of spirituality. This idea comes from the division of the land of Israel amongst the 12 tribes. It wasn't that, go into Israel, live wherever you want, enjoy the land. It was Shevet Judah, tribe of Judah, you must live there. Tribe of Dan, up there. Tribe of Ephraim, over there. Benjamin, over there. And land was not allowed to be exchanged between tribes. You married into another tribe, the land didn't move with you. It had to stay where it was, and people had to live within their tribal confines. They could live wherever they wanted, but if they wanted to achieve something spiritual, they had to stay within their boundary. It wasn't that they lived anywhere. It's that when you are in a particular place, that's where you make a difference. And the question is, but I want to live everywhere. I want to have the whole land. And the texts say you don't need the whole land. You just need your small part. And when you have your small part, it's as if you have the whole of Israel. Which is why we have this idea that wherever an individual Jew is, that is where Israel is. You want to know where Israel is? Right here in this room. There's also an Israel in the Middle East, but there's also Israel here, because Israel is a soulful existence and it is connected to our soul, and where we are is where the land is. Where we are, we create holiness. And so all it takes is either it is holy or it isn't. Either it is Israel or it isn't. It either is or isn't. 20 cents, $5 million, same impact. Which means that the only difference is the frequency at which you channel the energy. If you give one time, you get one dose of energy. If 20 cents and $5 million does the same thing, if you keep giving 20 cents, it's like having constantly a quarter of a cup of water as opposed to 1 litre. Have you ever been really thirsty and you drink a litre of water? The medical world will tell you if you're dehydrated, it's not enough to just drink a litre of water. You've got to keep sipping, keep sipping, keep sipping, because your body can only handle so much water up until a certain point. And then everything else is just going to pass through. But if you keep drinking that quarter cup, every 10 minutes, quarter cup, over the course of the day, you'll be far better hydrated than if you drank 2 litres in 1 hour. And that's the idea of giving 20 cents, $1, $1 multiple times during the day. You allow the flow of energy to continue flowing through your day, through your life. Continue impacting your mind, continuously impacting your surroundings. Up to how much should you give? 10%. 10% after tax is what you should be giving in the course of a year. In the course of the year, and why not more? Because once you've got the amount of flow, you can't increase. Once you've got the infinite, you can't increase infinite squared. Once you've got it, you've got it. And how do I know this? Because that's what the Torah has told us. The prescriber of spiritual flow has told us that 10% is more than sufficient to have this flow of energy in your life. So, what I'd like you to do, as your homework, I'd like you to give $2 of charity, $1 of charity a day, whatever you can afford. But break it up into 5, 10, or 20 cent coins. And one of those coins, if you can, must go to another person. It's not enough to just put it in the charity box, because there's a whole other impact of soul-to-soul giving. If you can't find a person, put it in the box. But keep doing it over and over and over again. Your bigger homework, because I don't have access to you after tonight, is pledge to give 10% over the course of the year after tax and after your vital expenses, such as food, if you educate your kids, things like that. Give 10%, and you'll be like, I can't. See, here's my final cool idea around pledging and spirituality, and I just learnt this last night. If you pledge money that you don't have with the intention that you will give it, you will receive that money to be able to give. And that's because, as I started tonight, money is not ours. We are just the divine banker. And if we start banking on behalf of the divine can entrust us with the money to be distributed. So consider whether you can go past the $1 commitment that I'm calling for, which is a total of $7 a week. Can you actually commit to giving far more, but not right now, but over the course of a year? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Menachem. I've got to tell you that I've advised a good number of companies in my life, companies that were experiencing difficulties, and almost invariably, when I suggested that they increase their tzedakah, their profits went up geometrically. Now, the only way you can test that out is to test it out. Okay. Sim walked into this room carrying a very big prop, round and red, and it's sitting over there on the floor. And I'm just wondering what he's going to do. What I'd like him to do is to demonstrate how you can stand on that ball on tiptoe like a ballerina. I'm not sure if he'll do that, though, but I will hand it over to Sim. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, every session I have a dedication. Last time it was for my beautiful Guten Shume, Roma. You don't have to stand up this time. Now this time, I really struggled. You know, when the Nobel Prize Committee decide to give the Nobel Prize, if it's literature, philosophy, mathematics, sometimes they have a problem. They have two candidates equal in the work. So when they have such a case, they decide the prize will be shared by the two candidates. So I struggled today, and I decided that I have two dedications. The first one, Leah, please come in. The first dedication is Label and Leah. It will take only 1 minute. The first dedication. Now, why? In every generation, you can identify people who resemble the quality of Avraham, of Yitzhak and Yaakov. Those three columns in Kabbalah are very essential to create light. Even if you see a light bulb, it has three columns. Right column, left column, and a filament. And if one of them is broken, there will be no light. Label and Leah, to me, remind me the purity of Avraham. Total chesed. Label is Avraham, and Leah is Sarah, but blessed with few more children. Now, if one didn't experience the level of Achnasat Orchim at Leah and Label's place, as they said, you don't know what it is. I never in my life experienced such a warm welcome to every individual. And when I observe Label, the way he interacts with people, I picked up one quality that I train myself daily, and I suggest everyone here will try to do it as well. When he has to choose between being kind or being right, he always chooses to be kind. That's all there. Toda rabah. The second candidate. The second candidate is, guess what? You. The quantum group. Now, if you don't realize what does it mean to belong to a quantum group, you have to learn a bit of quantum physics. Now, as you know, quantum physics is the physics of small particles, subatomic particles. Now, the quality of subatomic particles is they are not moving in a linear way. That means their past does not determine the future. They can be here, there, everywhere, simultaneously at the same time. And there's a certain calculation. You can calculate the probability for subatomic particle to be here and there. But that's how they can be potentially. For you to make a choice to belong to the quantum group means that your past does not determine your future. You can take this course, every part of this course, and take it anywhere you choose. It's truly up to you. Thank you. You are the second one. Talk about kindness. Okay, let's do a quick summary. What did we learn about till today? So exercise first almost about better your health, prevent or better manage chronic diseases related to inflammation and being overfed. Now we know as a fact that all chronic diseases from diabetes, cardiovascular, Alzheimer, kidney diseases, you just name it, arthritic condition, start with cell inflammation. The cause for cell inflammation is bad nutrition, not exercising, and high level of stress. Cardiovascular fitness increases exercise tolerance, positive effect on cholesterol ratio, increase insulin sensitivity. Very important to improve insulin sensitivity because insulin is the hormone in our body that removes sugar from the blood into the muscle to use as a source for energy. And when insulin sensitivity reduces, sugar stays too long in the blood and converts to fat, which is energy storage in our body. Exercise build muscle, improve muscle to fat ratio, reverse. As I said last time, the numbers on a scale are misleading. Don't trust them. What's more important is the ratio between fat and muscle in your body, by far more important than the total number. Reduced level of stress hormones like cortisol, we spoke about that, stimulates production of body natural painkillers and mood elevators like endorphins in the brain. You can beat your genes. We know now that lifestyle can reverse the effect of bad genes. Improve neuroplasticity. We know as a fact now that like the universe, the brain can continue and expand. Okay? We thought in the past that the brain reaches a limit if it's time, the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's it. From then on, we decline. No. It can expand at any age. Age is not a limit. Added bonus is that, yes, you will look better. Of course, everyone wants cosmetic effect, and exercise and correct nutrition definitely have an effect. So how to achieve it? By a good diet, exercise, and strength management, definitely. Now, for some of you, again, talking about being in a quantum group, if some of you decided that you're not going to the supermarket aisles and picking, like in the past maybe you used to pay, packaged food, canned food, sauces, now you realize the hidden dangers in those type of food. So you stick more to clean type of protein. Eggs is all right, like you know it was in the news just a couple of days ago. Eggs is okay, it doesn't increase cholesterol for 99% of the population. Fish, chicken, a bit of meat, not too much meat. Fresh vegetables, and a bit of fruit. Again, not too much fruit. Once you cut those sauces, canned fruit, and etc., you'll be much better. Now, every cell in our body benefits by exercising. We reduce, especially the layer of fat around our waist. And get rid of the stress level. There are different forms of aerobic exercise. One can use a cross trainer, and I'm a definitely advocate of this machine, great machine, because you're actually not just doing walking or cycling, you actually can work your upper body and your lower body at the same time. Okay, you can do boxing sessions on it with fantastic positive effects. And then you have strength. We know the contribution of muscle to our immune system, to our brain, to our metabolic rate. You see, there are two processes in our body. In every part of our body, we're going to two processes. One is called formation and one depletion. Okay? So till the age of 30, most of us are forming a skeleton, forming a top level of hormones, and from then on, we start to decline. Muscle, the quantity of muscle that we have, and the strength, the quality of muscle we have a fantastic effect of slowing down aging. People who train regularly aerobically and strengthen the muscle have by far better hormone profile, by far higher metabolic rate, by far higher enjoyable life. They become more positive, more endorphins in the brain. Life is good. And now we're getting to other type of exercises, and we talk about the core, the importance of developing a strong core for many reasons, which one of them is supporting our lower back, our lumbar spine. Okay? Many people, as they get old, even young people, unfortunately suffering from lumbar pain. And one of the best way to reduce the discomfort and to prevent problem is building core. And the way to build core is by using the isometric principle. Isometric principle means when you contract your muscles for a certain period of time. So you can do it on a feedball, which I'll show you shortly. You can do it with what I call TRX, which is my favorite equipment in gym, but you can buy similar things to use at home. You can use every muscle in your body with TRX, And you can do what I showed you previous time, the plank on the floor. Stretchings. Now, stretchings, essential part. And the reason is, it makes you feel young. It reduces joint pain. And I recommend every person to stretch every day. Now, if you want to see what I do now, some of you will have to stand up. I'm very flexible because I'm working 50 years on my flexibility, so I'm not a really example, but all starters can start this exercise. And what you do, you just slowly bend down, slowly. Just visualize one vertebra after the other. And you go as low as you can, naturally, without pushing. Now, once you get to your point, and let's say your point is here, you do 10 very gentle movements of up and down. Just very gentle. Now, that exercise stretches your lumbar muscles, your hamstrings, and your buttocks. Locked knee, so you don't bend your knees. 10 of those, and then again, slowly up, contracting your core, pulling your tummy in, and straight. And you do it again, 5, 6 times. And I can guarantee everyone that is doing it daily, the only thing I don't suggest you to do it first thing in the morning, when you're a bit stiff. But during the day or evening, before dinner, don't do it after a meal, with your tummy further, you'll be a bit dizzy. So don't do it before the meal, before dinner, it's a good time. Do it 6, 7 times, take your time, pay attention, be mindful of your breath, and within 3 to 4 weeks, you will start to feel more flexible. You'll start to feel that your movement is improving.
I want to thank David for doing all this wonderful running around fitness training for Sim.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, total all the benefits that it's okay. Yeah. All the benefits of stretchings, and I'll move to the next one. Please stay on top. Yes, you made the choice to come, and as I said, I really respect the decision that you made. It's as important to stay on path, to continue and improve. Like I said in my first session, be like water. Flow. Continue to flow. Now, it doesn't matter really how much progress you made. Don't get frustrated if you made a small progress. It doesn't matter. It's the butterfly effect. It's a butterfly effect. If I come to Roma and I'll say tomorrow, I want to be religious, and I start to go yamake and breakfast, and I want 2 kitchens and an ocean, she'll come and shake you. But if I go to Roma and say, look Roma, I just want to wake up in the morning to say Shacharit. That's all. That's all. I start with Shacharit. Like is it? No problem. You say Shacharit. Start small. The butterfly effect is a physical effect. It's recognized by physics. So start with a small change, but make that change flowing. Small change after small change. Progress in those areas, in mindfulness, in nutrition, what Debbie told you, in exercise. Just pick up and move forward. Physical activity. Okay, that's a press release on Australia Heart Foundation. Speaks for itself. And now I'm getting to the football. That red bullet, you know, some guys are thrilled to play football, and I love my football. Now, they come in different sizes. Most people, I would say, well over 95% of people require the 55 centimeters diameter. If it's too big, it's no good. If it's too small, it's no good. So from a high of 150 to 185, 55 is perfect. Only the longer option of 2 meters something, the basketballers, they might need 65. But think in normal human beings, 55 perfect. The first exercise I want to demonstrate is the squats. Now, I showed squats before, but some people... Now, squats. Some people have a difficulty with squats. Maybe the knees a bit hurting or the hips. I always find that doing squats with a feet ball, pressing against the lumbar spine, extremely beneficial. So we stay a bit further, with toes pointing out, and we get to a sit-down position only, keeping our back straight against the wall, and moving up. Now, if someone has a problem so low, up to this point, it's fine too. The butterfly effect. After a month, you'll be able to move lower. Keep your breathing going. Very important to continue and breathe throughout the exercises. Okay? There are many exercises that I write down for my patients in the clinic, but the one I want to demonstrate to you is first the plank. Now, I showed you the plank on the floor. This version is harder because it's not stable. So you have to use more core muscle, more of the oblique to be able to do it. So even if you do it 10 seconds initially, the one who are ready to do it, because they can do already 40 seconds or a minute on the floor, then what you do is, on your knees, place your elbows, and then tight. And breathe. Again, getting down on your knees slightly backwards to release the pressure of your lumbar spine, and then you can move. Even if you do it 10 seconds, it's fine. But the idea is to build up the strength of your core to a full minute. Okay? Abdominal. I'm against doing crunches on the floor. It's not a recommended exercise for people who want to have a healthy lumbar spine. But I definitely recommend it to do it on a feet ball. And there are different levels of doing it. So I start with the easy version, whereby you sit on the ball and you roll forward. Now the easy version is putting your hand on the tummy and feel it's contracting. And then gentle moves. And the moves are done through your abdominal. Not through the neck, not through the shoulders, straight. You become a bit stronger, you fold your hands on your shoulders. That's a bit harder. And then when you listen to We Are the Champions, then your arms backwards. And then you sit down, be satisfied with yourself, and stand up. Now, I emphasize the importance of doing this exercise slowly. It's not the number of times that you do. It's the total time of resistance that your muscles are working against gravity. Okay? So, to summarize, Lebo, I'll be on time today, I'll beat you today. Now, to summarize, a person, men search for meaning. Viktor Frankl, highly recommended to read it. Find a purpose in your life that you want to keep fit. And it's amazing, when I spoke about fitness, people think physical fitness. No. I talk about mental fitness. I'm talking about emotional fitness. Of course I'm talking about physical physical fitness as well. It's very important for a person also to be aware of the relationship between the thought and the feeling. If you have some negative thought about sweating and doing exercises, you feel bad about doing it. It's written in the Talmud. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. So if you change your consciousness, you change your reality. The mind is not a mirror of reality, rather construct reality. So let's work on our mental fitness, emotional fitness, and exercise fitness. Kol hakavod and good luck.
Thank you very much, Sim. It's very, very special to have you here. The relationship of mind and body. Sim's alluded to it a number of times. A good number of our speakers have alluded to it a number of times. We are an extension of spirituality. Spirituality, when it becomes physicalized, becomes the physicality of our life. But it's all one spectrum. And therefore, if we can move easily along the whole spectrum, from the most spiritual to the most finite, and navigate that, then we create a holistic approach to life. And one of the ways that we actually are able to achieve that is if we can take away the noise that centers in our head and disrupts the beautiful possibility of everything being united in one state of wholeness, as I've mentioned. And meditation is probably the most effective mechanism to be able to achieve that. So I'm very indebted to Bev to coming these 4 nights and sharing with us, and ask her to share of her time again this evening. Thank you, Bev.
So welcome to session 4. Tonight is the end of the series on meditation. That is the beginning of you continuing to expand the understandings and skills that you are growing. Okay, thanks. Now, the written feedback from last week, after the meditation in which you entered the space of your pause button, demonstrates your strengthening ability to shift into relaxed focus. Some of you in that brief exercise were already gaining insights into when this could be useful to you, that is the practice of meditation, and particularly moving into a space of calm and pausing. And the insights that you drew on after that exercise were it could be useful in the classroom, when dealing with ill family, before reacting to an emotionally charged situation or conversation, for slowing the heart rate, being energised, balanced and grounded, to create a sense of calm and peace that is enriching and that can assist in letting go of negative thoughts and behaviours when they are not useful. So they're the insights that came from you last week. And the feedback that you've been giving me each week since session 1 speaks volumes about the beneficial shifts that you have been creating in this room in the space of this series. Mostly in the beneficial direction of creating calm and a sense of inner balance through the myriad of words that you've used to describe your experiences. So tonight we're aiming to bring everything together and to connect you with the steps that will enable you to continue to move forwards in the direction that you want. So on this board, the whiteboard, we can review our explorations. So essentially, within the symmetry of this triangle, we can see that we have been exploring the body, the breath, and the mind in this series. And tonight, we're aiming to connect in the space of our being and strengthen our connections through our understanding and our experience and our ability to integrate what it is that we are experiencing. And we're going to be exploring this triangle, through a guided meditation. So if you'd like to begin by making yourselves comfortable in whatever way you choose. Now, for those of you who are more comfortable leaving your eyes open during meditation, or certainly in the beginning stage, you can choose to look at something in front of your gaze, something that calls to you in terms of its colour, its texture, its shape, the play of light, whatever you see, whatever you receive through your eyes when you look at whatever you're focusing on, and looking at it as if you haven't seen it before. And sitting in this room now, becoming aware of the contact you have with the floor is always a good place to start in terms of connecting with the space in which you are. And you can become aware of your feet and where they're resting and the contact that you're making with the floor. And now bring your awareness to any sounds around the room, extending your listening as far away as you want. And then you can bring your awareness to your hands and where they're resting, making any adjustments at any time to allow yourself to become more comfortable now or later. This simple meditation of connecting with the senses allows you to connect with the body. The body is always in the present moment and creates a space for you to be tuning in to the present moment. And in this space, you may be noticing some sort of connection occurring. You can be noticing from the top of your head, through your face and scalp, down through your neck, to your shoulders, a sense of connection starting to align. Then the ripple effect of this connection can be flowing now down into your elbows and hands, and then moving gently through your chest and abdomen, hips, knees, ankles, and feet that are being supported by the carpet on the floor. And this sense of connection within you, to whatever extent you're noticing it, allows you to shift into a gentle space of comfort and calm. And there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to change. As the parasympathetic nervous system that I spoke about in week 1, the balancing mechanism within our autonomic nervous system becomes automatically activated, beginning to restore inner balance. And my voice is going to become quiet for about 30 seconds, allowing you the space of just tuning in to sitting in the chair, connecting in the way that you are. And then when my voice returns, you can remain as relaxed as you want, and we will move in this guided meditation to explore another element of the triangle. So the time is all yours now until my voice returns. And now we can be moving on as you remain as relaxed as you want to the awareness of the breath, tuning in to your own natural rhythm. There's no need to try to change anything. There is no right or wrong way to be exploring and allowing the expansiveness of the breath to be naturally occurring wherever you're noticing it. In the nostrils or mouth, in the chest, possibly in the abdomen. And as you are breathing in, you can be aware that you are breathing in. And as you are breathing out, you can be aware that you are breathing out. In meditation, you can discover the ever-changing nature of thoughts and feelings. And as you remain tuning into your breath and the connection you have with the floor, you are sitting steadfastly as the observer. And you can watch any thoughts and feelings come and go like clouds moving across the horizon. And as we discussed in session 2, the out-breath is a natural release mechanism, a mechanism by which the body lets go of the deoxygenated air that's no longer of any use. And you can simply be allowing yourself to go with the flow and to be releasing any tension, discomfort, unease with the outflow of the out-breath without having to think about it. Just allowing the out-breath to be expanding out into the atmosphere, where you may be able to get a sense of how far away from the body the air actually extends once you breathe it out. And focusing with your attention on your breath and on your feet, you can be connecting with the comforting and protective spaciousness that can be arising from within. And my voice will become quiet again for about 30 seconds, giving you the space to be focusing fully on what you're noticing. And now we move to the mind at the apex of the triangle that I drew, to the thoughts and feelings that want to steer the vehicle of the body at times down roads that go nowhere. And you can allow, in meditation and at any time, any thoughts and feelings that are not serving you to gently shift into the back seat of the vehicle of your body, where they can settle down and become quiet. or you can gently let them out and park them somewhere to create calm, peace, and comfort in your own space, and in whatever direction you are being called to, in response to the guiding beacon of your deepening sense of purpose and meaning. And the way to get to where you are heading is to choose the series of steps that will take you there. Someone wise once said, "Obstacles only appear when you lose sight of your goals. And you can't fail, you can only learn." Even Viktor Frankl, who other presenters in this series have been talking about since session 1 and tonight included. The presenters have been referring to Frankl as a beacon of inspiration. And it's interesting in his later years that he had to overcome an aversion to flying. He recognised in the space between the stimulus and response, he needed to step into the power of choosing his own response. And so the first step he took in this space of choosing his own response was to fill out an application form to get his pilot's licence. And if you would have been able to visit his home when he was in his 60s, you would have seen on his wall, together with the 28 honorary doctoral degrees that he'd obtained from universities around the world, together with his medical degree, his PhD in philosophy, there was a certificate hanging which showed that he had flown solo in a Cessna plane. Now, your first step beyond this series may not be to enrol to get your pilot's licence. However, your purpose and meaning can be found in whatever direction you choose. And the determining what that step might be has been a process of suggestions that's been occurring throughout these series. And the space is now open to you to choose what resonates deeply with you. And the next step for you may be something quite simple. When you walk out of here tonight, you will notice there are some seed pods in the foyer. Seed pods from beautiful tall trees. You may choose to take one, to recognise that throughout this series, in fact from the moment you chose to attend, you have been growing the seeds of manifesting change in whatever way you have been focusing your attention. And so the seed pods are there for you to choose one that may appeal or speak to you in some way, to take home and put it in your own environment, to remind you of the steps that you may be wanting to take in the direction of creating your own purpose and meaning beyond this series, in a way that allows you to connect with yourself and step into your power and freedom. So now feel free to be aware of sitting in a chair in this room, bringing yourself back to a full focus of being in this room, and being aware that in the process you are growing your ability to manifest any aspect of change that you are choosing in your life. So just bring yourself back now to the full awareness of the room. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so hard to move out of that very beautiful reverie. I think that if we had Bev saying all those lovely words to us just as we were getting to bed and sleeping, that would be perfect. So we'll have to ask her to make sure she provides us with a little get-to-sleep little narrative. Thanks so much, Bev. And before we finish off with our last 5 minutes with Lauren, let me just make the following points. On your way out later on, there'll be a big basket for the feedback sheets in the front for you to put them in there. And for the people who in this room are in the quantum series, you'll be receiving progress reports upon completion of a second questionnaire, which will reach you, and that way we'll be able to monitor your progress. You'll also receive one in 8 weeks' time again, and those of you who are stuck to it may even see even more progress. The only other thing is, apart from the feedback sheets, please feel free just to contact us individually, Menachem, myself, or anybody with any thoughts, any suggestions. We would welcome to hear from you. Lauren has, each time she comes here, come at the end of a period of working in the evening, and we would very much like you, Lauren, to be able to feel refreshed here as well, and therefore we give you this little time to come with the people here, let them refresh you, and you to refresh us with yoga.
Thank you, Label. Okay. Hi, everybody. We haven't met yet. My name is Lauren Schneeweiss, and I'll be taking you guys just for the next few minutes and be demonstrating another pose this week. So I hope you've all been going well with the last 3 poses that we've gone through. This one that we're going to be going through today is called cat-cow, and benefits of this pose, really good. They can help lower back pain, and it's really nice stretch for your back and your front torso. Also stretches the neck. So yeah, I'll demonstrate this one for you. So you'll begin by coming into a tabletop position on the floor. And you might want to hear if you do have any issues with your knees, any injuries. My knees are a bit touchy, so I usually just place a mat underneath my knees. You can also place a blanket underneath your knees, or you can fold up a mat as well. That can be helpful. And so you'll begin in a tabletop position. So what you'll do is you'll take your knees directly under your hips and hip width apart, and you'll untuck the toes here. You'll then place your hands down, placing your wrists directly under your shoulders. And then here you really want to spread the fingers nice and wide and allow the eyes of the elbows to come in towards each other. So it's really common here to hyperextend through the elbows. So just make sure that the eyes of the elbows are facing each other. And then here just coming to a neutral position. So I'm almost imagining you've got a teacup resting on the back of your neck, just allowing yourself to look in between the index fingers. And again, just making sure that you're really spreading those fingers wide and pressing into each of the finger knuckles. And then just looking down and slightly in front of you. And we're going to be moving with your breath here. So really great for breath awareness. It's almost like a moving meditation. So to begin, you'll inhale and you'll start to lift the sitting bones towards the sky. Also lifting the chin, lifting the chest and looking forward. And then take your shoulders away from your ears. So we're coming into cow here. And then as you exhale, you'll tuck the tailbone under, tucking the buttocks underneath, taking your chin towards your chest and rounding through the spine by pressing through the hands. And again, you'll move through your breath. So you'll start to round, you'll start to lift up the sitting bones once more, lifting the chin, looking forward. And then again, with your exhale, tucking the sitting bones under, taking your chin towards your chest and pressing it through those hands to round through the spine. And then you'll keep going with your breath as you inhale to extend and exhale to round through the spine. And just keep moving in this way for about 5 to 20 breaths. And really just focusing in on your breath here as you move through the movements. Again, if you do have any neck injuries or issues, just keeping the neck in line with your torso. As well, if you are pregnant, just moving between a neutral spine and into cow. So just moving between neutral and to cow. Otherwise, just moving through, inhaling to extend, exhaling to round through the spine. And just being really gentle with yourself as well. You know, you might feel like you really need to push into certain parts of the body. Just be kind and gentle with yourself. And give that a try, about 5 to 20 rounds of inhaling and exhaling. And yeah, that's all for tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. Well, we've spent 4 weeks together. We're really hopeful that these 4 weeks, at the very minimum, have been informational, but at the very maximum, transformational. And I really look forward to having you move further with us. I think this is merely a taste. We're getting a sense where we can move in certain directions, certain specialities in terms of the information. So those of you who would like to develop in one particular arena more or another particular arena more, we can design that for you. So I want to congratulate you. You've been very special to have devoted 2.5 hours practically on every occasion. And in so doing, you have demonstrated your commitment. I know that through commitment comes progress. I want to wish you a very happy Shavuot coming up. Thank you and good night.